Many doctors think that Lyme disease is simply a tick bite. Bacteria goes to your joints. When I would go to doctors, they would say things like, well, the symptoms you're having are not Lyme related. Because doctors, they don't understand. They don't know or they don't understand that Lyme will attack the weakest systems.
This is Mind Body Matters with Greg Rennie and Rob Reeford.
Welcome, listeners. Today, another episode about the body of the mind-body connection. We're going to talk about Lyme disease today and a treatment called PEMF. Have you heard of this before at all, Rob?
What does that stand for?
I didn't know until I met my guests a little while ago. What it is pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, also known as low field magnetic stimulation. It's a gadget that's being used, and it's apparently being used to treat Lyme disease. And we have a guest today that is a practitioner, a healer, that uses this PEMF for treating Lyme disease and other illnesses. I haven't heard about it until I talked to her about it.
What is this gadget?
Apparently, it's this round coil, and you put it on your chest, or you have your practitioner put it on your chest, and then I guess they kind of dial in what your problem is, and then apparently it realigns, or maybe the energy has some kind of effect on the cells in the body. I'm not sure.
Oh, so it's not a thing that diagnoses you. It's actually something that treats you.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. And
okay.
You can go to a practitioner like our guest today, Suzanne Casamento, or you can buy it as well, you know, and then it comes with an app, so that when you put this thing on your chest, then you dial in what your problem is, and apparently, you know, realigns. But we're going to find out more, you know, talking with Suzanne. But a bit about Lyme disease. I didn't know very much about that, but I did some research. Rob, 14% of the world's population, no matter where you are, okay, 14% of the population has had tick-borne Lyme disease.
So when you say tick-borne, you've been bitten by a tick.
Yeah, bitten by a tick. Yeah.
Okay.
I heard someone, they got it because they're out lying in tall grass, and apparently there's a lot of ticks, even where we are in Canada. And if you get bit by a tick, then this bacteria that it has gets inside your body.
And it causes big problems.
Even, well, we were talking earlier, maybe really big problems with being bit by a tick. Today, we have author and practitioner Suzanne Casamento on the show today. And she's had Lyme disease. Our guest has had Lyme disease, and she found that this AMP coil, or PEMF, worked. And so then she went on to become a practitioner and healer. She's an instructional designer, and she has a Bachelor of Arts degree in creative writing, and has written 2 books, Fingerprints and Choosing Tally. Now, we both agree here, Rob, we're not quite sure what PEMF is, so I've got a lot of questions. Any questions you think I should ask at all when as you're producing it and I'm talking to her?
How does it work?
Folks, we're being really honest here. We really don't understand how it works, but that's why we have guests come on the show and talk about things that we're very curious about. Today, enjoy our conversation with Suzanne Casamento.
I'm super excited to talk with you. I mean, you know, it's funny, when you and I had our conversation a couple of weeks ago, I kept thinking while we were talking, oh, we should be recording this.
Yes, I know. I thought the same thing. I saw your email. I totally agree, because we kind of really got into it. And I think a lot of my excitement and interest comes from working in radio and understanding a little bit about radio engineering and the use of frequency. So this makes perfect sense to me. For some people, it might be a little bit odd and hard to understand, but I mean, the way you explain it to me on the phone is great. When we talked about the mind-body connection being, you know, the premise of the show, the focus of the show. And we got into some really cool conversations about the body is, you know, primarily water, and, you know, how the moon affects your body. So, I mean, we know that there's a strong connection between our mental health and physical health, but based on your experience, and how do you see that connection? Like, what have you found that reinforces that those two work together?
yeah, so the connection for me, or the moment, I don't know if it was a moment. I started to see a somatic therapist.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And the goal there was to sort of reassociate myself with my body after, our culture is so focused. It basically leads us to disassociate with our bodies, right? We numb ourselves with our phones. We numb ourselves with alcohol.
Oh, for sure.
We numb ourselves with, TV, all kinds of things. And so for years, I had been avoiding trauma and basically just working really hard to stay in a state of numbness so I didn't have to face anything or heal anything. So with the somatic therapy, we did a lot of talk therapy, but we also did a lot of exercises to help me recognize what was going on in my body and really help start to clear some energetic pathways so that I could heal. But it took me a long time to realize that, the issues are in the tissues. And so I had a profound moment. I went to a breathwork meditation class when I had never done anything like this before. One of my best friends had recently died of breast cancer, and she had these two little babies, and my friends and I, a close-knit group of us, were really working very hard to keep her and her babies alive up until the time that she died. And probably, I don't know, within 6 months of her death, I went to this breathwork meditation class. And so it's a series of like very deep, fast breaths. And, so you take a couple breaths into your chest and then a couple breaths into your belly, and then very fast way. So during the breathwork meditation class, the song "You Are My Sunshine" came on the playlist. It was the last song on the playlist, and that was the song that her mom used to sing to her when she was a child.
Really?
Yeah, and it was like everything was "You Are My Sunshine." She had "You Are My Sunshine" on her wall. I mean, it was, a really big thing for her. And I started bawling. I mean, just burst into like sobs during this breathwork meditation class. And then I started to hear, in my head, "I'm so mad at you. I'm so mad at you. I'm so mad at you for dying." And at the time, I had lung infections. I had kidney infections. I had bladder infections. And I knew, but I wasn't connecting that that our major organs are, correlate to emotions. So I wasn't thinking about the fact that lungs held grief, and the liver holds anger, and
most people don't make that connection.
Fear. Yeah. And in that moment, it sort of all clicked.
Yeah.
And I think the teacher mentioned it, and I was like, oh my God, yes, like all of these emotions are holding all these infections in my organs. My organs are holding all of these infections because of these trapped emotions. And so then I started doing breathwork meditation all the time. But that was like a huge realization that I wasn't going to heal physically until I healed trauma.
And we may have talked about this on when we talked on the phone, but there's a very well-known book out there by Bessel van der Kolk, "The Body Keeps a Score." So a lot of people are talking about this now. So it's not that far out what you're saying. And
yes,
regarding trauma, right?
Yes. So I read that book when I was sick. I read that book in, I think, maybe 2016 and or 17. And it was profound. I mean, just to understand that there was scientific evidence that actually backed that I could hold my ancestors' trauma in my cells. And so, I mean, I think in the book there are examples of people who had ancestors who were in wars and saw, horrible things experienced horrible trauma in battle, and then people who their sons, daughters, and loved ones would end up having PTSD and not knowing where it came from,
right.
And it wasn't theirs, right? And so that was absolutely fascinating. And then after that, actually, I ended up going to an energy healer who told me the same thing, that we carry ancestors' traumas and generational trauma and everything. And I said, oh yeah, in the book. So it was amazing that this was something that the energy healer knew and just knew divinely and actually was backed up with science. Mm-hmm. But yeah, now that book is everywhere.
Almost every episode, every interview, that book comes up because we're talking about the mind-body connection. So that book comes up all the time for sure.
That's great.
I'm interested in knowing, before this discovery and understanding about trauma in the body, when you're younger, how did you see life? How did you see the mind-body connection, and how did you discover AMP Coil? Or I think AMP Coil kind of found you in some ways.
Yeah, it definitely found me in some ways. Yeah, when I was younger, so I grew up in a small town in New Jersey and in the 80s, and if you're a Generation Xer,
I am.
you might relate. Yeah, so you might relate to. Things were different back then. And my household was very chaotic. My dad yelled a lot when I was a kid. I was very scared. I was scared as a child, and so I would hide in my room and read books because that was safe, right? Which is great because that in itself was a gift. I ended up becoming a writer due to my love of words. And, but as I grew up, it was the 80s, right? And so we were in New Jersey. We drank a lot, I grew up as a teenager. It was normal to smoke cigarettes, drink, smoke weed,
mm-hmm.
There was a lot of, that was just normal. And so, so I did that, throughout my teen years and my 20s. And, in my 20s, I moved to Hollywood and ran around with a bunch of friends. And same thing, more partying. And then in my 30s, a bit more of the same, right? And then when I was 40, I started to get sick. And disease always comes for a reason, right? Mm-hmm. It comes to stop you from doing something that you're doing, mm-hmm. to tell you something. And so for me, it came to tell me, hey, you can't do this anymore. This is not what you're supposed to be doing. And so I then changed everything. But that whole time, right, I wasn't looking at unhealed trauma from my childhood. I wasn't looking at, or my teenage years, because with that, as fun as it is to be partying and drinking all the time, bad things happen. And so, there was a lot of stuff that occurred that I had never dealt with. And so, so Lyme disease came along and was like, hey, buddy.
Yeah. What a sign. What an unfortunate sign, to come along.
Yeah. It was like, you need to get some help.
Yeah.
And so I did. And as for the AMP Coil, I didn't discover that. I was sick for 6 years before I discovered AMP Coil.
I think you're doing tapping and Reiki at that time. Is that right?
Yeah. So I started by going to doctor after doctor after doctor who was basically saying, well, your tests look fine. And, oh, you seem fine. Are you sure this isn't in your head? Doing all that medical gaslighting that they're so good at.
Yeah.
And really not giving me any answers. And so then I went to a naturopath and then a homeopath. And then I saw a Chinese herbalist. And the Chinese herbalists were helpful. That would definitely, they did muscle testing and they started to define things. So at the time I was having infection after infection. It was like chronic urinary tract infections, bladder infections, kidney infections, kind of like gross stuff in my lungs. I had vaginal infections, chronic yeast infections. I didn't realize, but I was living in a place that had hidden mold in it. And so it wasn't until then that I really started to get sick. because I was diagnosed with Lyme in 2003. I got bitten by a tick and I had a classic bullseye, and the doctor gave me antibiotics, and I took them, and then they said, well, you can forget you ever had Lyme. So I did. It wasn't until 9 years later that I moved into a place that had mold. They felt it was
gone? Like it was cured? Or like, why would they say that?
Well, it's very peculiar with Lyme disease. Doctors seem to think that once you've been treated, you've been treated,
Oh, okay.
It's very strange. And don't really believe in chronic Lyme disease. And to be honest, I felt pretty normal. I mean, as normal as you feel when you're running around and eating bad foods and drinking on the weekends and, that kind of stuff. But, I felt pretty normal for about 9 years. And then I moved into a place that had hidden mold. And then that's when I started getting infection after infection after infection. And going to the doctors, and then the Chinese herbalist, which the doctors had no answers for me. But the Chinese herbalist then said, well, you have a massive bacterial infection, and, you have a really strong virus, and you've got an antifungal resistant massive fungal infection and all these things. So they started giving me herbs for these things, and I'd feel better for a little while, and then it would get bad again, and there was never really a solution. But they started to kind of put names to what was going on. And then from there, I went to an environmental doctor who did bioresonance, where I held on to two metal rods, and she then saw it was like line charts across a screen, and she could see what frequencies were showing up in my body. And so she said, you've got horrible bacterial infection and a really strong virus and a massive fungal infection. And so she was echoing everything that the Chinese herbalist said. And
with
that
frequencies.
Made me think, yes, with frequencies. So the Chinese herbalist was doing it with muscle testing.
Oh, yeah.
And then the environmental doctor was doing it with frequencies. And the Western doctors were saying, well, your tests look fine.
Yeah, that's par for the course for Western thought. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So then I started to explore other things. And like you mentioned, the EFT tapping and the breathwork meditation and Reiki. And then I went to a shaman and an osteopath who was amazing. I went to a urologist who told me I had to have surgery on my bladder.
Oh, man.
And then I went to an osteopath who did all this manual manipulation on me. And the problem was that I would sit down on the toilet to urinate, and I couldn't. I'd had to push. And so I went to an osteopath, had one session with him, went home, sat on the toilet, and the pee fell out. And this other doctor, this urologist, wanted to cut me open.
Oh, man.
So, I mean, I had so many stories.
Scary.
Yeah.
Well, it must have been very frightening to hear all these different thoughts about what's going on.
It was scary. But I just knew that the more I tried weird things, the weirder things I tried, the better I was feeling.
More alternative ways of approaching it.
Yes, which at the time I felt were weird. Now, I mean, I feel like Western medicine is weird, and it's the last place I go.
What helped you to have an open mind? I mean, you're talking with the Chinese herbalist, and then you're talking about frequencies. You must have an open mind. What helped you kind of take that in and see it as real? It
was desperation.
Yeah.
I mean, really. I mean, how many doctors could I go to that were giving me no answers? And I mean, I had burning in my urinary tract, and I would watch TV with a bag of frozen peas on my crotch.
Oh, jeez.
And that was going on for a long time. So, and there were other things. I had massive brain fog. I had gunk in my lungs. I had what I called bowling ball head. My head felt like it was a heavy bowling ball, like at all times. I couldn't really think. So I had all these symptoms. I knew something was horribly wrong. So like, I just had to keep searching. I wasn't going to give up. So yeah. So I went to the Chinese herbalist and I started to do everything holistically and eventually became really well.
For the audience, I mean, you mentioned about the tick, and I think people, that's all they know really about Lyme disease. Can you explain a little bit more about what it is and what it isn't so people have a better understanding what it is?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Lyme disease is a tick-borne illness. There are actually many tick-borne illnesses. Rickettsia, Rocky Mountain fever, Ehrlichia. There are a few different. But Lyme disease is the Borrelia virus. Bacteria that can be transmitted from a tick into a human. And so for me, I was at a barbecue in New Jersey, and I was bitten by a tick. And the next morning, I had this incredible pain on my back. And at the time, West Nile virus was all over the Yeah, that was all over the news. And so I said to my friend, I think I have West Nile virus. And she's like, you do not have West Nile virus, stop being a drama queen. So I said, look at my back. Did something bite me? And she said, oh my God, there's a bullseye. And so Lyme disease in 50% of the cases will present in a bullseye rash, which looks like a bite in the middle and then a red ring around it. So mine was huge across my back, and I had 2 red rings, or super, super swollen, and I was like bent over. And in that way, I was lucky because the bullseye rash only appears in about 50% of cases. And so many people will go their whole lives not knowing why they feel so terrible.
Because they didn't have that obvious mark that presents. Exactly.
And Lyme disease is widely misunderstood. Many doctors think that Lyme disease is simply a tick bite. Bacteria goes to your joints, causes swelling in joints, joint pain. And so when I would go to doctors, they would say things like, well, the symptoms you're having are not Lyme related, because doctors either don't understand, they don't know, or they don't understand that Lyme will attack the weakest systems. And so for me, that was bladder, the excretory system, the reproductive systems, and the lungs. The other thing is that Lyme brings friends, and it has a lot of co-infections that come along with it. So for me, that was Epstein-Barr virus, which is horrendous. Otherwise known as mono, which just feels like...
Well, that's the virus that creates chronic fatigue syndrome, right?
Yes. And so I had that too. And I had a massive mycoplasma infection in my lungs and my excretory and reproductive systems. And that's another co-infection of Lyme. And it's really interesting because I've found that a lot of the co-infections of COVID are similar to Lyme co-infections. So people who are experiencing long haul COVID can also experience mycoplasmas and Epstein-Barr and many of the other same viruses. It's really nasty. Before I went to go get the demo, the AmpCoil demo, I asked for a sign. And I said, I prayed to my granny, and I said, Granny, show me a sign. If this is what's going to help me, show me a sign. Because an AmpCoil is a really expensive device.
Yeah,
it's $8,000.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And the year before, this was in the beginning of 2018. And in 2017, I had made $31,000 that year. I paid $20,000 out of pocket for medical costs. So obviously upside down in the math there. I was already $65,000 in medical debt, and I had family help above and beyond that financially. And I had, cabinets full of supplements that weren't helping at all. And so I just thought to myself, there has to be something different. And so I asked for the sign. I went to get the demo, and after the demo, I felt like remember in the old cartoons where like there'd be a black background and all of a sudden you'd see two eyeballs pop up open, white, like boing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I felt like. It was like my eyes were suddenly alert, and the helmet head was still there, but it was just everything felt less. Like the brain fog was a little less. The eyes were a little more alert, and it was almost like I had an espresso, but there was no jitter, but without any jitters. And I thought this is amazing, you know. And so I asked the woman who gave me the demo. I said, "Well, did you have Lyme disease?" And she said, "Yeah, I did." You know, she said I was sick for 20 years, and then I got to 75%, and I just couldn't get past 75%.
Yeah. Wow.
And I thought, oh my God, it's my sign.
Right.
And then she said, and then I got an amp coil, and she said after 6 months, I felt good. And after a year, I felt amazing. And I thought, oh, there's my sign. That's my sign. Mm-hmm. So then I bought one thinking, okay, well, if I spend $8,000 in 2018 on medical costs, then I'm saving then I'll be saving $12,000 in comparison to the $20,000 I'd shelled out the year before. And so in 2018, I ended up spending $10,000 total on medical costs. So I saved myself $10,000, and I don't have medical costs anymore.
Amazing. What exactly happened? I know you got that sign afterwards and you started to feel some results, but when they did the demo, how do they demo it? Like, give us some details on where it's put and how it works.
Sure. So the amp coil is an actual coil and an amplifier, amp coil. And there's a tablet, and on the tablet there are all sorts of journeys, and there are high-level journeys from like Relaxol to the harmonizer to headache help or common cold, and then you can go in and dig a little deeper and do like a liver detox or kidney detox or lymphatics, or there are journeys for muscles and fascia and ligaments and bones and then beyond that, there's an A to Z library where you can actually, if you know that you've been diagnosed with Epstein-Barr virus or chlamydia or herpes or chronic fatigue, you can go in and actually select those items and then amp coil for those particular frequencies. So I went in to do a demo, a harmonizer. So it's called Demo Harmonizer, and it's for horizontal and vertical alignment, grounding, chakras, a little nutrition, a little spinal. It just makes you feel groovy. So I went, that's the demo that I had. And basically, there's a coil, and it's a round coil. It's kind of heavy. And you put it on your torso.
On your torso? Why your torso?
Well, it's kind of the middle of your body.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, yeah. I mean, unless you had a specific need to put it elsewhere. So, for example, sometimes people come to me with shoulder pain, so we'll put it on a shoulder.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So you can put it on an area that might be particularly affected with something. But generally, put it on your torso. So so this woman, I just went into her house. I laid on her couch. She put it on I drank a glass of water because the frequencies travel really nicely on water, and water has memory, so it can hold frequencies, right? And our bodies are mostly water.
Yeah.
So, So the frequencies really, they travel and they resonate really well when you're super hydrated. So I drank a glass of water. I put the coil on my torso. I closed my eyes. It was a 27-minute demo. And, when I sat up, I just felt better.
Did you feel anything during it? Like, did you feel any vibration, or did you, was there a shock to it, or I'm just kidding.
No shock to it. No. I didn't. I saw things. So, can you see me hesitating? That sounded funny.
No, that's interesting. What happened?
Yeah. So I had my eyes closed, and I was seeing sort of like gray, background, right? And then I just kept seeing bursts of purple.
Really? Wow.
It was weird. I don't know what it was, but that's what I was seeing during that first journey. And I told the practitioner afterwards, and she said, and of course this is her opinion, that's your brain breaking up gray matter. And I said, okay, I don't know, but I felt that shift just a tiny bit better, And so it's really interesting because now that I'm a practitioner now, and people come to me now. Yeah. And, and people will ask, well, what am I going to feel? What's going to happen? And I'm like,
is there fear?
Everybody.
There's some fear and trepidation about the first experience?
Oh, no. I don't think that they're worried about, is it going to hurt or something like that? I think they're just curious and they want to know what to expect, right? Mm-hmm. But every body is different. And so some people, like if I ran a harmonizer on you, and then I ran a harmonizer on, your wife or your friend or whoever, the reactions could be totally, completely different. So, for example, I had one client who came in, and she wears a Fitbit every day, and I guess it tracks sleep. And so on the night that we did a demo harmonizer for her, she came during the day, and that night she got the best sleep that the device has ever tracked on her. And she's been doing the data for 3 years. She showed it to me. And it was like off the chart of deep sleep, off the chart of REM sleep, it was really, she's like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing ever, right? So, I tell clients, some people sleep really well. Maybe you'll sleep really well. Maybe you'll feel a little more energized. Maybe you'll feel a little more calm. Maybe you'll be a little more relaxed. One thing that I hear over and over is that people will feel tingling in a specific part of their body. So, for example, there was one woman who came and she said, it went straight to my left leg. And I said, well, how is your left leg? Has anything been going on with your left leg? And she said, my left leg has been swollen for like 3 months, but I could feel the tingling in my left leg. I was like, fantastic, And then somebody else said that she felt, this is funny. So I recently ran a journey on a 9/11 first responder. So I actually ran a journey for her for respiratory support. And afterwards she said, I felt it in my left knee, and I said, well, that's weird. Cause it's supposed to focus on the respiratory support. And she said, yeah, my left knee has been killing me for weeks. And then when I checked in with her a few days later, she still had no pain in her left knee for days. But that was really interesting because that was a respiratory journey. Mm-hmm. Whereas with the harmonizer, I expect it to go, wherever someone needs attention. So that was really, really interesting.
I'm sure what's coming up for people is, how does this thing work? And you said, I know that it works, you mentioned it works differently for each person, but who invented this and how does it work? Or is it kind of like it works and we don't really need to know how it works, or what's the science behind it?
Well, so the people who invented it are they're Lyme survivors who also were incredibly sick for years and could not find answers. And I'm not sure how it occurred to them to try frequencies. I think they might have been familiar with Rife frequencies. And so kind of went in that direction and then put their own twist on it. So, for anyone who's not familiar, Rife frequencies are named after a man named Rife, who he created a Rife machine in the early 1900s. And
oh, that far back, eh?
I think it was the 1900s. I could be wrong. Forgive me if I am. And he proclaimed that he had a cure for cancer. And he ended up bankrupt. He was shut down with his claim for with his claim. And there are Rife machines that exist, and people use them for Lyme. I know many people who have Rife machines who have had great success. And so I'm getting off track, but there are a list of frequencies, and they are in a directory called, I believe it's CAFL. I should have done my homework. It's either CAFL or CATL. I will find out, so you can put it in show notes.
No problem. We're not going to hold you to it. No problem.
Okay. But it's a directory of all the different frequencies for everything.
Okay.
And I mean everything from like eye twitching to ingrown toenails. I mean like everything. So with the Rife machine, it can be programmed for specific frequencies for a person's particular needs. And so which is a little bit different. So an amp coil uses sound and pulsed electromagnetic fields, which create the frequencies. So it combines the two, creates the frequencies. And then the engineers have figured out how to create what they call a sound curve. And in that, it actually cascades. So some tones are shorter, some are longer, some are louder, some are softer. And they create these combinations. I don't know how they engineer it. I mean, it's like rocket science to me. And they create these combinations, which are kind of similar to songs. That's the only way I can put it into a common language that we can visualize.
I mean, music comes to me. It did when we talked earlier, music. And you're saying this uses sound. So, yeah, it makes perfect sense that it could be in a wave, much like a song would be in a sound wave, I imagine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so the amp coil has a tablet, and from that tablet, you can select any of the journeys that I mentioned before, like the headache help or the common cold or, hormone harmony. And, and so those are called journeys. And each journey is specifically designed using these sounds and pulsed electromagnetic fields to so that they contain frequencies associated with whatever it is. So frequencies associated with upper hormones or thyroid and thymus or reproductive hormones and adrenals. So it's amazing. I can't tell you how the engineers actually do it.
But it works, right? And that's what I'm sure you focus on. No need to know the science, all the details. You know what works, and you use it as a healer, and you see it in other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel that way about so many modalities, right? Like, I don't know how EFT tapping works, but, I'm doing it. Why wouldn't I do it? It's free. It's easy.
Yeah. Well, I know that works, too. I've talked to lots of people that have had success with tapping.
Yeah. Yeah. And so many other amazing modalities. And what's so cool is that there are so many other amazing modalities now. There's infrared saunas and red light therapy and cryotherapy and cold plunges and, the squeezy pants that do the lymphatic drainage massage. And I mean, it's amazing. The technology in that way is so amazing. All the things that we can do now.
You mentioned a lot of things that are somatic, a lot of things, illnesses and problems with the body, but the focus of the podcast being mind and body. Tell us how it helps the mind. Tell us about mental health. Does it have you seen results for depression and anxiety?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, part of that also is that we have to remember that mental health is physical health.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, mental health, any kind of mental health challenge or imbalance is going to be caused by a physical imbalance, whether that's hormones aren't being produced and not enough serotonin or not enough melatonin or not enough, too much cortisol, or, you know, somewhere there's some kind of imbalance, whether it's neurotransmitters are not firing properly.
Exactly.
Or, you know, things just aren't working right. And there are so many things in our environment, whether it's metals, pesticides, microplastics, molds, EMF, all of those things can so horribly damage our bodies and send them out of balance that they are factors in mental health. All of it's factors in mental health. Not to mention, you know, not to mention phones, day-to-day stresses, you know, all the other things that come along with it. So there are journeys that are specifically designed for mental health in the AMP coil. The Relax All journey works to put the body in the parasympathetic state, works to put you in it. I mean, it's amazing. It is so calming.
Yeah.
And it is only in that state that the body can heal, right? So we have to get into that state in the first place. So that is my absolute hands down favorite journey. I run it often. There are several brain journeys that work with neurotransmitters, work with the central nervous system, work with just calming the body. They work with the parasympathetic, the amygdala, the cerebellum, all of those things that, you know, also impact mental health. The hormone harmony is incredible for mental health. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, it's incredible for all health. It's incredible for menopause. Let me give a little shout out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people would be happy to hear that. What does it do for menopause?
Well, I'm 52. I have not had a period in 2 years, so I am in menopause, and I have not had one symptom, not one hot flash, not one mood swing, not one. I mean, it is incredible for just balancing hormones. It sends the frequencies for those hormones and to balance it out. It's just incredible. I mean, it also works for, you know, people for women who have really horrible periods, and for PMS and things like that. It works for men with low testosterone. The hormone harmony it's a gem. And it also helps with the emotions too.
Yeah, that's where I'm really interested as a therapist. I'm thinking it's quite possible that frequency has to do, or like the benefit of the use of sound and frequency would have an effect on how the neurotransmitters are working in the synapse of the neurons, the brain cells. Because
Absolutely.
medications either increase or inhibit regarding, say, serotonin. So I imagine the PEMF and the sound has an effect on the neurotransmitters. Do you know much about that? Can you speak to that?
I don't have a lot of details about it. I'm going to be honest, but I do know that it absolutely works with it. I mean, there are journeys. I mean, I can think of several different brain journeys that do include things like that. Actually, the positivity journey also includes, I think that also includes frequencies for neurotransmitters. And it helps with, you know, anxiety and depression. It's definitely a mood lifter. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's also an emotions detox on the AMP coil, which detoxes grief, anger and fear, and it also helps to increase frequencies for joy, meditation, and the amygdala. It's a really incredible journey. It's very powerful because, you know, the body can, as we know, the body keeps the score, right? The body can hold stuck emotions.
There's blockages.
And those stuck emotions. Yeah. And they really do block people from healing. They really do block the energetic pathways. And so it's super important to do the emotions detox. When I see someone and I have a client where, you know, we're working on a certain thing. Like I had a client who had shoulder pain, constant shoulder pain. So we ran, you know,